everyone. A very warm welcome to everybody who took out time on Sunday morning to join us for this session. We are in the process of exploring various spiritual healing modalities. And today I have a very interesting topic and, of course, a very acclaimed guest on this show. Vinayji is an established philosopher, thinker, and self-management expert. His translation of complex Vedic principles into practical tools of living is backed by 25 years of in-depth study and research on Vedas and Upanishads. Founder of Wisdom Foundation, he has inspired thousands of people to transform their lives using the wisdom of Vedas. So today the topic of the conversation is Vedic wisdom for purposeful life. So welcome, Vinayji.
Thank you, Mallika. Thanks for having me here. It's wonderful spending this Sunday morning with you and with a host of others.
Pleasure. So we will begin today with a simple question. Vinayji, how did you happen to come into this sphere of work? Could you please talk to us about some of your work and your journey? May I request you to unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now, loud and clear? Okay. So I don't think all of you heard me. Thank you, Mallika, for having me at the show, and lovely to spend a little time with you and the host of others. Glad you all can join. To begin with, I would love to share my little journey, I should say. It all started when I was 16, when I was least prepared for anything like this. My father, who picked me up and took me to a spiritual discourse on Bhagavad Gita, for the reason he said that I would be very interested in the language because the speaker was a great orator. And from a very young age, I had a passion for English. So when I went there to that lecture, more than the language, it was the contents that blew me away. I was completely floored. It was a lecture on the Gita. It really mesmerized me. I was completely swept away. And that very evening, I decided that I would get into this Vedantic journey. I would want to learn this Vedic wisdom. And I got into it. And it's been 3 decades now. I have never looked back. And if you ask me, that's one of the wisest decisions I had taken in my life. And the journey has been absolutely phenomenal, unbelievable inward journey. It's truly transformational, you know. So no sooner after I had this little learning, I took to lecturing, I took to sharing these ideas at the age of 19. And I must say this, and I must confess, I find myself the youngest as a teacher or as a guru in all classrooms right throughout my life. So even today, when I do take classes, in fact, you will notice that at the extreme right, extreme left of your screen, we have Krishnamurti Garu. We lovingly call him Tata. He's 91. So I have students in my Gita classes from the age of 10 to 90. So that's the range of people that come to my classes. Nothing is mine in this. It is that great wisdom of Vedanta, which is always looked on. So when you compare the age of wisdom vis-a-vis the age of experience, the age of wisdom scores, and wisdom doesn't have any physical age. And even if you look back into history, it has always been that men of knowledge were always sought by men of power. It was never that men of knowledge went to men of power. The men of power always went to men of knowledge or men of wisdom. So it is this wisdom that is I would say, is the need of the hour. So my journey happened all of an accident, you know. So I was not prepared for it. but it's a pleasant accident, I must say that.
Wonderful. And I see that you have been initiated at a very young age and you have followed your heart and passion. So please talk to us about why Vedanta or the wisdom of the Upanishads is so important for us and why now?
Okay. Briefly, I would want to give a little insight as to what is this Vedanta all about. See, the word Vedanta, which gives us the Vedic wisdom, the word Vedanta is derived from two words. Veda means knowledge, and Anta means the highest. It is the very end of knowledge known to mankind. So here is a knowledge which deals with our lives and living. It has got direct relationship to our life today. So this knowledge of Vedanta is also known as Sanatana Dharma, which literally means principles which are eternal. They don't die away with time. They're applicable to every person, every situation, in whatever context you're in. It is very relevant to your life. So these are eternal principles. In fact, to understand it, you could very easily say science is organized knowledge. Vis-a-vis, wisdom is organized life. So science, in fact, deals with the knowledge which conveys all the laws which governs the world. The various external laws, the laws like the physical laws, they are the chemical laws, the biological laws, the geographical laws, the physiological laws, etc. So all these laws put together, you could call it the branch of knowledge called science. Vis-a-vis the Vedic wisdom, Vedanta talks about the laws which govern an individual. So these are the internal laws. Now, what are these internal laws? Perhaps the laws which govern a human birth. Why is somebody born into opulence? Why is somebody born into poverty? Why is somebody born healthy? Why is somebody born diseased? Why does one die in an accident? What is the reason why one dies in whatever way he dies? So there's a laws which govern the birth and death, the laws of attachment, the laws of deserving vis-a-vis desiring. There are the laws of physiological laws, the intellectual laws, the spiritual laws. So all these internal laws put together, that branch of knowledge is called Vedanta. So science deals with external laws which govern the world. Vedanta deals with internal laws which govern an individual, a human being.
That's beautifully explained. So, what is the origin of Vedanta? And
The origin of Vedanta is actually from the very Vedas themselves, the very Veda Anta. So Vedanta is giving us the very quintessence of what Vedas have to give, which are nothing but the Upanishadic declarations. They are the truths, the highest truths known to mankind. But it is something, in short, you can call Vedanta as nothing but an instruction manual to life and living. Nothing other than that. It is just a manual to life and live. And life cannot go on without a manual. Like when you buy any gadget, can you operate a manual, the gadget without a manual? It's rather difficult. So also life cannot go on without a manual. So what it all tantamounts to is living is nothing but a skilled work, which is what the Vedas are saying. Living is like a know-how. It is an art. It is a technology. It's a technique. Just like singing is an art, playing music or an instrument like piano or a guitar, or to play a particular sport or to even drive your car safely. It's an art. Now, I would say the biggest mistake humanity has made is that they have not understood, they have not realized that living also is an art. And that's perhaps the biggest mistake of mankind. They have, because they don't realize that it's an art, they have lost the game of life. And we are paying a very hefty price because we have not realized that. And you cannot perfect life without knowing how to learn and live it, isn't it? Like, I may have a particular skill. I could be a very talented musician or a singer, but ultimately I still need to learn it and practice it and perfect it. So also is life.
Correct. The world's most complex and highly sophisticated machine has been given to us. We are born with it, and we never ever make an effort to understand or read the manual, or at least understand what is that we're born with and how to use it. And I agree with you that in this, and then the complexity of it, we do lose track, and there is so much unhappiness, anxiety, and stress around. It's probably because of what you're saying, that we do not understand what you're dealing with, and we do not have a goal or a purpose. Hence, we are actually going in circles and unhappy. So, could you please talk to us about why you think Vedas have all the answers for a happy and purposeful life?
Absolutely. I'm glad you're thinking along with me, and I hope everyone else is thinking along with me. See, when I say that living is an art, what do I mean when I say it's an art? In fact, I have three principles I'd like to briefly present. The three principles primarily, when I say an art, we are talking about art here is one's relationship with the world. It's how you relate with things, situations, and people around you. And one of the first principles we need to keep in mind, that it is not the external world of situations, things, and people that disturbs you. As you say, happiness. If you find yourself disturbed, we believe it is the external world that has caused havoc in my life. The first principle we need to understand, it is not the world, it is rather your wrong relationship with the world. It's not what you relate to, but rather how you go about relating whatever you relate to. It's not what you relate. And I got this beautiful advice, in fact, 20 years ago, on the day of my marriage. I got an advice from a very wise person. And he said this: it doesn't matter whom you marry, Vinay. It's up to you how you relate to the person, whomever you marry. And I must say, to the truest extent, I'm trying to apply that principle. It's not who the person is, it's how I relate to the person. So the first principle we got to understand is it's not the world, it's how you go about relating to whatever situation has presented. Now, secondly, if you have to relate with the situations, the second principle is you must understand what you're dealing with. The principle of assessment. You should be able to assess situations and people and circumstances exactly as what they are. You must understand, my mother-in-law is not my mother. My daughter-in-law is not my daughter. I got to fundamentally differentiate that. You got to have this. You can't expect the world to fit into your desires. You can't expect the world to cater to you, can you? You can complain and complain and complain, but the world is going to be what it is, isn't it? And if you look at life, most of the problems arise because of your loved ones. You choose a partner, and thereafter you don't know how to deal with a partner. So this is what I mean, the art of right contact. It's not whom you choose, but how you deal with the person you deal with, how you relate to that person. That's very important. And thirdly, the third principle is Whenever the world is challenging, the world presents itself difficult to you, you should not complain. In fact, when you find a tough opposition, doesn't it bring the best out of a sportsman? Doesn't business flourish when you have a stiff competition? Now, other day, I've had an experience of something which I had when I was a child. Of functional. Now, he has a sharp stone fitted onto the bicycle, and he parks the bicycle and he pedals it. And in a matter of few minutes, he sharpens and gives you a simple application, but gives you wonderful results. Now, what is the objective there is he has a rough stone there. And you need a rough stone to sharpen a knife. Similarly, you need a rough world to sharpen your personality, but you need to know that art of right contact. Now, if you do not know the art of right contact, you are in trouble. So these are the three principles, Mallika.
Wonderful. So if I understand you right, everything is boiling down to knowing who we are and how we relate to the world and understanding the bigger picture. It is just not about people or circumstance, how you fit into the bigger picture of cosmos. Is it right?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And I agree with you. There are so many challenges that people are going through. And it's a good phase in a way where people are vocal about it and they're talking about these problems and challenges openly and not taking it as problems are part of life. So it's a good thing that we want to look for solutions. For that we need to ask the right questions. And yes, there are challenges in relationships. There are a lot of aspirations career wise, financially, want to be doing a lot of things, accumulating a lot of wealth. So how do we begin applying these principles of Vedanta to life? Where do we start?
Perfect. It got me right to what I wanted to say, which is how do you bring in these eternal principles as tools, as practical tools for applied philosophy? No use of all the knowledge if you can't apply it. So given the complexities of life and its challenges, I would like each one of you to look at life and understand what is the primary purpose of life, of every human. You will realize that every human being has two primary motivations. Everybody wants to go about acquiring the world, and having acquired, they want to enjoy. So the two primary motivations is acquisition and enjoyment. So if you say acquisition and enjoyment, these two have a clear implication. The acquisition talks about the material aspect of your personality, and then happiness or enjoyment talks about a spiritual aspect of your personality. So every human being, whether you agree with it or not, whether you know it or not, have two aspects, two elements, the spiritual aspect and the material aspect, the outer facet and the inner facet. And what you look at life today, you can make a fair judgment that people are rich outside, externally, but they're poor internally. They're not rich within. So it is this imbalance of their personalities within. So there is a lopsided personality in every human being. And it is this imbalance in an individual is going about creating havoc within, and it creates havoc in the society at large. And nobody seems to realize this. Not that you should not advance materially, you should advance materially, but you should also advance spiritually. A very well-renowned philosopher was asked this question What is your concept of richness? Who is a rich man? And that wise man said, a rich man is one whose desires are well within his assets. His desires are well within his income. You're a rich man. But the moment your desires swell and go beyond your income, you're a poor person. Well, advanced materially, at the same time, you must know, you must be able to contain your demands and desires well within your resources. And that management is lacking all over. And that is evident. You find people are either successful or peaceful. You will not find people peaceful and successful at the same time. So one bracket of people are successful and not peaceful. Another bracket of people are peaceful at the cost of success. But very rare you come across a human who is successful and at the same time he is peaceful. This is what is technology, isn't it, Mallika?
Very true. And at School of Personal Excellence, we believe in having it all. There's no more, you can have this, but you can't have that. It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Yep.
Please help us understand, how can you have it all?
Wonderful. How you can have it all is by understanding a human being a little closer. So when you look at a human, there are 3 states of a human personality, or rather you can say 3 states of a mind. Now these are technical terms that they are known as gunas. I'm sure most of them are familiar. Gunas are nothing but mental temperaments of a human being. So every human has got 3 mental temperaments. One is tamas. Tamas is an inactive state. Rajas is a state of hyperactive. Sattva is a state of being transactive. So all boils down to which state you belong to, whether you belong to the sattvic state, a rajasic state, or a tamasic state. Now, I'll give you a brief of what these are. A tamasic person is a person who is lazy, who is ignorant, who is indolent, who is heedless in life. As a result of his ignorance, he finds himself very blissful and happy. As the saying goes, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? I could be having a terminal disease and I wouldn't know that I'm diseased, and I'm celebrating, I'm well, I'm throwing parties, I'm having a gala good time, but I don't realize I'm a carrier of a disease. Ignorance is bliss. Such people, they are inactive, but yet they're peaceful. Now you come to the rajasic category, the hyperactive people. Now here are the people, the majority fall into this category. These people are chasing their selfish desires. They are full of aspirations, expectations. They're driven by the greed, that obsession for proprietorship. They want power, name, recognition. They want the world. And in the process of chasing their desires, they find themselves extremely agitated, disturbed, stressed. And the current crop of the corporate world, they're all trying to advance materially, but by their own confession, they have lost their peace of mind. Why? Because they're fallen under the rajasic category. And haven't you gone back into the financial history? Whenever there has been a financial crisis, it just boils down to human greed. History has proven it time and again, but we have not realized where we're going wrong. So these people are active. So because of action, they're productive, but they are not peaceful. They're not happy. Now the Shastras have given us a very powerful example. A person who is in a rajasic state can never find himself peaceful and contented. The classic example is Ravana. Ravana had, in that famous epic Ramayana, Valmiki talks about Ravana had everything. He had a harem from the heaven, and yet he wanted Sita. That is what your mind will crave for, that which you do not have. and you can never ever satisfy that mind. Remember, your mind is like a Ravana, asking for one more. Like that play Oliver Twist, they say Oliver asked for more, and it was a furore it created. So your mind asks for more, you keep demanding more. So rajasic people are active and not peaceful. And sattvic state or sattva is a state where actions are driven by the buddhi or the intellect. You have a goal or a purpose in life. And when you do that, a goal or a purpose means you have a higher ideal to serve. You've risen beyond your own personal self-centered interests. You embrace a larger interest of a larger cause. And when one has such a purpose or a vision and envisions such a purpose, life becomes very fulfilling, very satisfying, at the same time, very rewarding. So a sattvic person is who is very dynamic, who's very productive, who's very industrious. At the same time, he's very peaceful, he's very contented. This is a perfect state, and humanity doesn't know this. They are only shuttling between tamas to rajas, rajas to tamas. Nobody ever comes to that perfect state of a human, which is to have sattva. And a best example of what a sattvic state is, I'll take two examples. It's like a bullet train. If you've ever gone to Japan or one of these countries where bullet trains is a norm there, these trains are traveling at 400, 500 kilometers an hour. And you wouldn't even feel a ripple in your teacup. So that is dynamism, efficiency, at the same time, quietude, equanimity.
Stillness, yeah.
Stillness. But not at the cost of production. It's not the stillness of a tamasic person who is in heedlessness, ignorance. Stillness while you're dynamically active. Another example is an aircraft which is at a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. It is flying at 900 kilometers an hour. You wouldn't even realize that you're in the thin air. That is technology. Now that's possible very much. The Vedas are talking about this efficiency. At the very beginning, I said, science is organized knowledge. Wisdom is organized life. So if you take to this Vedic wisdom, you will lift yourself to that sattvic state where it brings the best out of you. Now, if you ask me, sir, yeah, very well said, but how do I get to that sattvic state? There's one simple principle, which in fact is the very quintessence of Vedanta, the very essence of Vedanta. As I've said before, everyone wants to find happiness, isn't it? That's the very fundamental purpose of life. The terminus of life is happiness. Now, how do you find happiness? The very famous words of the Vedas, they say, Tyaga Shantim Anantaram. Tyaga Shantim Anantaram, which literally means peace immediately follows a spirit of renunciation. So what these Vedas are actually roaring the truth, not just talking, they are roaring this truth to us, is to live a life of renunciation. But the moment I talk of renunciation, people misunderstand it. They don't want to come anywhere near renunciation, because the immediate question is, what am I to renounce? No, dear, you don't have to renounce anything. What they are saying is, when you are in life, there are essentials and non-essentials, isn't it? Now, while you're working, what are the non-essentials while you're working? While you're acting, the non-essentials are your worries and anxieties, your expectations, the fruits of your action. These are all the non-essentials. They're only saying, renounce the non-essentials and enjoy the essentials. Enjoy life. Get rid of the non-essentials. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to achieve that, it's just like a sportsman. A sportsman, doesn't he renounce the result of his match and enjoy the match? I may win, I may lose, doesn't matter. But let me give my best. That's the spirit of renunciation. In fact, there is a very spirit of Gita. Karmani eva adhikara. You know the famous words, Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Everybody knows it, but hardly anybody practices it. That's the sad irony of it. Even a child who knows the Gita, he will prattle it. What is it saying? Your adhikaram, your right is only with what you have to do. Do your duty. Renounce the fruit of action. So the happiness is a state of your mind. And you can only get that through a spirit of renunciation, not a spirit of attachment. In short, renunciation is the capacity to let go. You hold on to it. You are unnecessarily carrying the mental baggage with you that doesn't give you any peace and happiness. So learn to embrace that spirit of renunciation. You know, there was a very powerful article I had seen many years ago in a newspaper. It was talking about a mother monkey. In fact, it was an article with a picture of the mother monkey holding on to its dead baby carcass. The baby had died, but the mother was holding on to the carcass so dearly because it didn't want to let go of it. First day passed, second day passed. The mites started coming, eating the baby. The mother was still holding on to it. The mites ate the baby. They're still holding on to what was left of the carcass. The mother only let go once the mites started eating the mother. That is what I call the power of attachment. So you are so attached to everything, and the law of life, as I said, Vedanta talks about laws of life which govern life. If you live a life of attachment, it causes enormous pain and agony and misery. Like when somebody scratches your car, amount of pain you have. But if somebody scratches your company car, you take it Monday morning and get it to the office and say, get the car painted. It is not yours. It doesn't bother you. But the moment you develop an attachment or a possessiveness to it, it causes enormous pain. So Vedanta is only telling us, live a life in a spirit of renunciation. So it is not renouncing things. You live a life, a spirit of renunciation. And that's what one must cultivate. But the problem is, these days, many people have a lot of knowledge, but they don't have wisdom.
True. Actually, that brings me to an interesting point. Glad you mentioned attachment and detachment. So, as per Vedas, what is detachment in practical terms?
See the word.
Can I say something? And creation as a major requirement of Vedanta, but please let us distinguish between mental renunciation and physical renunciation. That is important. Because people usually mistake it as physical renunciation you are talking about. No.
Krishnamurti Garu, we are not able to hear you clearly. Could you please speak a little louder, or we would love to hear your idea on this.
You are not able to hear me?
We can't hear you clearly.
I see. Okay, I will do something else. Go ahead.
We would maybe at the end of it, we would still want to hear your ideas about it. So going back to Vinayji, could you please elaborate on detachment?
See, the spirit of detachment or attachment, I think what little I could get of Krishnamurti Garu when he was saying, many people believe, why the spirit of detachment is misunderstood is they think detachment is a physical quality. Detachment or attachment is not a physical state. It's a mental attitude you carry to things and beings. So as I've said, if you're detached to your car, you enjoy your car. Like we are all great philosophers when the problem is somebody else's. Why? Because we're very detached. It brings the best advice from us. But when the same problem comes, 1/10 of it to your own home, you can't handle it. Why? Because you're very attached to it. So Detachment or attachment is nothing but an attitude of being a witness to your life. If you're able to look at things objectively, and objectively means just take a step back and look at things in life. You can't, your attachment is getting too close to something. It's like if I have a painting, don't I have to take a step back or two and examine and look at, enjoy the painting? I can't get this close to the painting and enjoy it. Now people have got, attachment is getting that close to it. Attachment is a wrong relationship to things and beings. Detachment is having that right distance, keeping that enough space between you and the world, and you enjoy them. You accept them for what they are. You don't expect them to fit into your mental state. You accept them for what they are. So detachment is an understanding of what they are. Detachment is keeping the distance and relating with them the right way. Our mindset. We want others to behave the way we want, don't we? Just because another person loves you, does it mean he has to agree with you all the time? If somebody disagrees with you, how do you handle that disagreement? And you can't handle it because of your attachment. Sorry, Mallika, we can't hear you.
I said that's interesting. So let us take an example of, like you meant, a relationship. So a marriage, right?
Yeah.
So there are expectations, there is attachment. So how do you stay detached in a close relationship like that?
See, first and foremost, you must understand there are two different individualities. You must respect that individual personality for what he or she is. What happens is, why do people get into a relationship? Is because A finds that B is constantly satisfying A's demands, and B realizes A also seems to cater and satisfies B's demands. So each one is constantly living in the company of each other's expectations. And that's the very beginning of a relationship. I wouldn't want to be with a person who doesn't align with my thinking, who disagrees with me, who doesn't give me emotion. You wouldn't. So it all begins with you start catering to each other. And in that process, you fail to realize that there is a possibility that other person doesn't fit into my expectations, because there is nothing in life as 100% compatibility, isn't it? And since there is no 100% compatibility, you have lost the realistic aspect of life. You don't look at life realistically. Then you're driven on emotions. You lost your reasoning. You have lost your assessment. You lost your ability to relate with what that person is. You constantly want that person to be what you are, what you want. And that causes a great rift. So it all boils down to a simple assessment as to what other person is and accepting it. And by that, you give them the space in the room. And also when other person is not able to fit into your mental bracket, you should be able to understand and forgive them. So it is all about managing and handling your emotions. See, emotion is such a beautiful thing. It actually embellishes our human personality. But that very emotion, when you don't have a control over it, when you're not able to govern or harness it, it becomes a curse. A blessing turns into a curse. So today relationships are not lasting because you're not able to handle that emotion. Just because another person doesn't cater to you, you get emotion of anger. And I know relationships snap because of a certain emotion.
True.
So
And
it all boils down to that, Mallika.
correct. I agree with you. There is so much of codependency in relationships that's actually taking over more than celebrating each other's individuality and respecting those boundaries.
Very well said. Yes.
So, could you please take us through a process where we can apply these principles of Vedanta to resolve the issues or challenges in life? and find a purpose. How do we find our purpose?
See, it all begins with an understanding as to where you are, what is life, and how complex life is. And in order to resolve all this, you need not just information, but you need wisdom.
Correct.
See, knowledge is nothing but an information which you can gather it from an external source. And today we are in an era where we are inundated with knowledge, inundated with information. And mere information is of no use. It's like they say, information is like carrying gold on a mule's back. The mule doesn't understand it's carrying golds of bar. If it has an ounce of sense, it will sell 1 bar, it will be chauffeur driven. But it will be only carrying that load of gold bars on its back, isn't it? So the era we are in is we are inundated with knowledge, information. Information helps others, but it doesn't help you. But if you want the information to help you, you must allow it to go through a certain process. And that process is exactly like the food when you eat. The system goes through the process of digesting the food you have eaten. Just assume, let's say the food you have eaten is not digested, is not accepted by your system for some reason. No soon you'll realize you're into some big trouble or some trouble. You will find uneasiness, you'll have issues, you'll have complications. But when the food is accepted by your system, digests it, it gives you life, it gives you energy, it gives you stamina. Now, precisely the same way, the knowledge which is received has to be processed, has to be understood, has to be reflected, has to be made one's own. And when this process is not done, we will have people with ideas. As there's a beautiful saying, men with ideas and no legs are no more than intellectual centipedes. We have men with ideas, but they're like a centipede. You have 100 legs, but how long does it take for a centipede to cross a living room? Perhaps a whole day. It doesn't help you live a life, does it? So it's not as much as being informed, it's as much as being transformed. So in all our teachings, the way we approach it is there is an inbuilt thinking in the very teaching itself. It's not a mechanical process, but to question every aspect of the knowledge. And when you do that, you get the essence of it. And once you get the essence, then it gets transformed into wisdom. And when you have the wisdom, you start living it. And how does this wisdom express? There's a phrase in the Shastras which say, how do you know whether you have wisdom? The phrase which says Atma Buddhi Prasadajam. Atma Buddhi Prasadajam means a blessings of the clarity of one's intellect. You have phenomenal clarity. Now, if you give me time, if you allow me to clarify that, I will give you an insight as to how complex life is and how we make a mess of our life by making the wrong choice because we lack this clarity. But I hope we are all on the same page till now, because it is all that life needs is wisdom, not information. And we are not allowing the information to go through a certain process, which is done, it's like a science. It's just like I can't, just by reading medical journals, I don't become a doctor, do I? People have enough knowledge today, so they have self-acclaimed gurus, everybody has become. Just because they have so much information at their fingertips. But I would never take self-administrative medicine. Even if I have a headache for more than 3 days, I would still go to a doctor and consult him. So Vedanta is a science. And at the very beginning, I have said, we have not understood the fundamental thing that living also is an art. We need to learn it and practice it and perfect it. Just because one have lived a certain number of years, one can't claim to have perfected life. And this is what the Shastras are saying.
Very true. And there are so many of us who are well informed and not necessarily well educated. So
Yeah.
only when that translates into wisdom does it actually carry some weight and make sense of its existence. So on this note, I have seen this beautiful movie called Peaceful Warrior. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Yes, I have.
Yes, it's a true story. And then the disciple asks the master, "What is wisdom?" And they're in the car, and the car is getting washed. And he said, "You see the wipers? That's knowledge. And when the wipers start cleaning, he says, that's wisdom." So, uh, yeah, thank you so much for bringing that point.
Yeah.
So,